It is, 7:01. I call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's see. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Matt.
Are we too close together?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. All right. Motion passes. Community comment for anything not on the agenda. So what I see is if you guys have anything to say, not to put you in the hot spot, but I think you are our only potential for community comment.
Yeah, I'll just add that.
Come on up if you want.
Sure.
So Nate, our procedure is that you've got to introduce yourself, so your name and your address. If that's
Sure.
okay.
Yep. Nathan Royce. Pick an address here. 104 Forner Lane. And I just wanted to say that the revised plan for the park that's planned down by the river looks great. And we have a couple thoughts, but I'm not going to elaborate on them. I'll send them to Aaron. But overall, just looks great. And we're happy that it's going to be more of maybe a multi-generation rather use. So thanks for all the hard work on that.
Thank you. And I appreciate you coming up to say something when I put you in the hot seat. Thank you for coming up. All right. Item 5.1, under presentations and reports, the construction update Jonathan Carver Parkway Improvement Project. Mr. Jabs, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is Michael Jabs. I'm with Bolton & Mink, a senior engineering technician. I do inspections for the Jonathan Carver Parkway project on behalf of the city, and I have an update for you guys tonight. So this first slide is kind of showing the timeline. We're through stage 1. That had some traffic shifts throughout the corridor. We're in stage 2 there, where we have a full closure from 4th Street to Ironwood Drive. That is slated from June to August. And then stage 3, once we get to September there, we'll also have some minor traffic shifting. And to the right there are the current detours in place. As I mentioned, stage 2 is underway, going to remain in place through mid-August. The project's currently on track right now to be the stage 2 portion opened up before school starting. Local access is maintained to the Carver Square businesses, both from the north and the south. There's going to be partial paving taking place in the coming weeks towards the end of July here within the closure area. And then utility work is mostly completed. There's a little bit of storm sewer left near the public services building up by Community Park, but utility work is mostly completed through that stage 2 portion. Crews have been pretty busy in the last few weeks with curb and gutter installation. The roundabout's taking shape. Round, not square, the round kind, yep. Got a couple photos of them there. There is some curb pouring taking place near Catch Basin. Another look near Carver Dental. And then that is near White Pine Way. So that is highlighting the road work taking place. And that's kind of the beef of what's happening right now. A lot of road work along the corridor. That's all I had.
All right. Any questions on the JCP project? Just had one. After the full closure is opened up this fall, there won't be any additional closures or weekend closures, will there?
Correct. No major closures. There's going to be traffic shifts along the way, but right now is when we're in the heat of the closures. So.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Yep. All right. I think we're good. Thank you for the update.
It's nice watching a lot of dust fly around. Get it done.
It's dry right now, and they're taking advantage. So
well, with no rain, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's truly one of the nice benefits of not having a wet summer.
Mm-hmm. Full speed ahead.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, no public hearings tonight. We have the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would like to remove item 7.12 off the consent agenda before we approve it.
Okay. let's see, so remind me, we can still approve the consent agenda and then we go back and talk about 7.12?
Correct.
Okay. So with 7.12 removed, can we,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
okay, we got a motion by Councilmember Henry
I'll second.
Thanks.
and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. All right, item 7.12, approve the purchase of Mitsubishi Outlander for $33,630 from White Bear Mitsubishi for the Community Development Department building inspections.
I've got questions. Why do we need to have a electric vehicle to start?
I'll take that, Mayor and Council. It was a goal of the strategic plan that was adopted, as well as part of the Green Step Cities program. An additional step is that the financing is really typical for what a vehicle would be, so it felt like a win across 3 different check boxes.
Well, we can buy the same Mitsubishi Outlander with a gas engine for probably, well, when I looked up MSRP on this is 38. MSRP on just a gasoline engine Outlander is 26. I don't know, 12 grand for an electric vehicle. I think it's more about just dotting the I's and crossing the T's and being a part of the Green Step program. And I think that for 12 grand, I mean, we're haggling, we want to haggle with other things that we discussed earlier. I think it's $12,000 for a vehicle that we put on, I don't know, our last vehicle, 29,000 miles, under 30,000 miles in 8 years. I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze when it comes around to the electrical part of it. I just don't. I think that it's a waste of at least $12,000 that we can spend somewhere else.
I have a question then to piggyback off that. Can you turn your microphone up? There we go. I think we're getting some feedback. I am not familiar with hybrid vehicles, so if anyone has any, I don't know why this is giving feedback, but if I have, so it says on here 28 miles for the battery capacity. I mean, is that really all you get out of a battery charge is 28 miles?
So with the type of vehicle it is, so it's an electric vehicle for those 28 miles, and every time you brake, it recharges the battery. So depending on how much braking you do, the battery does regenerate charge. And once you hit that 28 miles, it hits to gas, which we felt like was a nice compromise as opposed to going full electric, which requires some additional infrastructure for charging. This requires just, kind of blows my mind, but a standard outlet.
What?
So we'll be able to plug it in at the fire station overnight. It's also typically without the JCP project, I would say our inspections department doesn't run more than 28 miles a day. So with the JCP project, it's obviously a little bit more with a detour, but it's anticipated during just regular non-construction time, they probably wouldn't be required to hit that gas. So it would cover roughly an entire day of inspections on the electric charge.
Unless, of course, they use the air conditioner. Because when you turn the air conditioners on these, they turn over to their gas operating feature. I'm just going to read one of the things out of Motor Biscuit regarding this particular vehicle. The Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV isn't worth it. It's weak, underpowered, and not very comfortable. I don't care about the comfort. If it's weak, underpowered, and isn't worth it in Motor Biscuits, they're one of the top Google searches for these types of vehicles when you're finding stuff. I just don't think that an extra 12 grand for an electric vehicle so we can feel good about watching a green car drive around is worth it, and we can spend our money elsewhere.
So you remember when we did the strategic plan?
Absolutely.
And I think that passed without any, when we adopted the strategic plan, that passed without any, I think that passed unanimously. This was one of the items on our strategic plan.
I understand that.
I'm still talking. So I don't think that there's any harm. I think that it's a good compromise and kind of a shallow end of the proverbial pool into green energy and getting a green vehicle. I also think that, Glenn, with that review that you cited, I think that I could Google and find on Motor Biscuit a real complimentary review, right? You look up a review for anything, and there are folks on both sides.
I'm
So,
sure there are.
I have zero issues with this.
So I'd like to clarify that the price is actually $33,630, so it's not a 12K delta. We're getting a contract price through the state of Minnesota, right? So the state of Minnesota is obviously encouraging and supporting different types of plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles for city purchases and getting a really nice price. I know we've benchmarked with some other cities. A lot of cities, their first foray into an electric vehicle is through building inspection because of the low miles, right? So it tends to make sense, especially when you think about, I think we're going to probably keep this vehicle more than 5 years. We typically do, right? So there have been plenty of studies and reports out there, notably recently by Consumer Reports last October, that did a study over the lifetime of a vehicle, plug-in hybrid or electric versus an internal combustion engine vehicle. And the cost of ownership, so fuel and maintenance costs, is 50% for a plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle. All the stats and data is there. I realize that this is probably a couple $1,000s more than an ICE vehicle if we compare contract pricing. However, this is a great way for us to take that step, as Courtney said, and kind of try it out and see how it goes. It's one vehicle. We're repurposing our other vehicle to be used within the community. And I think the cost to fuel it and to maintain it will be less over time.
So, I mean, we would use state bid pricing on any vehicle that we use. So, assuming that it was a gas-powered vehicle, we would also be less than whatever your
Probably,
general
yeah.
MSRP
I don't
would
know.
be.
I don't know what's on the stake.
So, but it would be, because that's why we use those state bids. Has anyone, test drove this, and you tell me about it? Tell
Sure.
me what it is.
So the state of Minnesota, in their fleet, they have 150 of the vehicles. Woodbury has 6, Egan has 4, Ramsey County has 10. So I spoke with the city of Egan and the city of Woodbury, both really complimentary of the vehicle, said there were 0 issues. Generally, they use them for inspections, and they said that they often don't click over to the gas just because of the low mileage every day.
But has anybody driven one?
We haven't, but I'm not sure there would be a fatal flaw that would cause us to not move forward just with the car if it didn't feel right. But generally, it's a midsize SUV.
Or any thoughts?
I support the purchase of it. Just thinking on the initiatives that we're taking with Green Step Cities, and it may not be some residents' personal vehicle that they would choose, and it would be some residents. So just trying to represent those residents that would choose this, as well as I like that this gives us kind of an entry point into seeing what the electric vehicle would be like to add to our fleet.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of a Mitsubishi Outlander for $33,630 from White Bear Mitsubishi for the Community Development Department building inspections.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Mayor Johnson and a second by Councilmember Sayre. Any further discussion?
Say, who's going to be doing the maintenance and upkeep on the new vehicle?
So I can answer that question. I spoke with the city's mechanic today, Ben, and I spoke with the dealer at Mitsubishi. So as part of the warranty, we have 5-year bumper-to-bumper coverage. The battery is 10 years, and we also have roadside assistance. So if at any point the battery dies, which it should not for the next 10 years, they'll come and tow the vehicle to the next nearest Mitsubishi dealer. It might be White Bear if they have availability. In speaking with Ben, the city's mechanic, he said that he doesn't have issues servicing the engine. It looks exactly like a typical car engine looks like. He made the comment that anecdotally he believes that many city fleets are going to start looking like this in the future.
So Ben will be capable to handle the maintenance and upkeep on it?
Yes.
And we don't have to run it to White Bear Lake to get repaired?
No, we should not have to.
Okay.
I have one more question. So, considering that it has a battery capacity of 28 miles, is it feasible then that we wouldn't use an ounce of gas? Again, I'm not really up on the hybrid vehicle, so that we wouldn't use an ounce of gas during a drive around?
It's possible, yes.
Okay, so we would have savings on that also?
Right, so the cost to charge the vehicle is about $1 a day, so $365 compared to a gallon of gas, which can range between $2 to $4. It's a pretty quick return on investment.
Thank you.
All right. all
But
those
there'd
in
be
favor-
quite a savings if you could spend 12,000 less and just get a gas vehicle as well.
So, but we've already, I think, confirmed that it's not a $12,000 difference because we don't know what the state pricing is, and that's the regular MSRP, but not the state pricing.
Well, if we went with both the MSRPs of both the vehicles, MSRP was 39 on this vehicle, and MSRP on a standard Outlander is about 26.
Right, but I'm going to advocate that we never pay MSRP when we can get
But-
state pricing, which saves the city money.
I understand
But they
that,
both be state
but
pricing.
it would
Right,
be a
yes.
discounted from both of them,
Yep.
so it would still
And I
be.
think Councilmember McKnight stated that it's cheaper initially, but in the long game, that there's this considerable cost savings.
What's cheaper in the initial?
A gas engine is cheaper
Oh.
initially,
Correct.
but when you're not, that in the long run, the electric vehicle, there's a cost savings. Okay, with that, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
All right, do we need to do a roll call vote? Sunshine, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Henry,
No.
Councilmember Mott,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Sayer,
Aye.
Councilmember McKnight.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 4-1. All right, let's see. Do you guys want to do business items, the feedback on the housing forum, and then what we skipped from the, okay. Vicki, are you in a place where you want to do cemetery talk now, or do you want to?
Bring out your dad.
All right, so we'll go with the item from the work session, which was Mount Hope Cemetery Rules and Regulations. Ms. Hansen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. City staff over the last few weeks has been reviewing our current ordinance that's related to Mount Hope Cemetery, and we've been looking at the potential of adoption of some comprehensive rules and regulations that would relate specifically to the operation of the cemetery. There is a Minnesota law that allows us to do this, and the reason that we would be looking at this would be it would be easier to make changes to the rules and regulations rather than going through the formal change to an ordinance. So some of the factors that we considered when we were looking at these rules and regulations were thinking about maintenance of that cemetery, fairness to the users of the community, long-term continuity, standardizing these processes, because right now a lot of this is not documented and we're doing the best that we can and just trying to keep things consistent. Thinking about costs, providing for restrictions, protection of the cemetery grounds, and then as I mentioned already, I think specifically we were looking at the ease of making these changes, allowing us to make changes to these easier than if we would just keep with the ordinance or put these changes in an ordinance. So the rules and regulations that you saw in your packet for tonight were prepared by city staff, and they've also been reviewed by our interim city attorney, Clarissa Volpe. And then in order to put these into effect, we will bring this back at a future meeting once we've had a chance to get your feedback on what we're presenting here tonight. So I guess at this time, I would just be entertaining if you have any questions, concerns, comments on the rules and regulations that we have drafted and are put in the packet for tonight.
Okay, so like Vicki said, this is a work session item carryover. We don't need a motion, but if anybody had any thoughts or questions on the cemetery rules. Nothing from Glenn. Christy's working on it. Yeah. Joey's got something.
How many plots are left to sell? Because I noticed the section about how the city will sell them, et cetera. Do we have a sense of how much that is?
I'm going to defer to Chad. I know that he's worked a lot with Bolton and Mink in
Okay.
plotting the cemetery.
I would say we have about 450 plots left.
Left available. That's a
Yes.
lot more than I thought. What percentage of the total is that? Half?
25%.
Oh, wow. It's bigger than I thought it was. Okay. All right.
That's it?
That was it.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Lori?
Just trying to take that in. I think this is really good. You definitely thought of all the factors, I feel like, so.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's anything over.
My only question, oh, go ahead. Okay, my only question, and you mentioned that continuity was something that you really kept in mind, but is there anything in here, and I saw the red line version, but anything that is out, that's correcting a practice that happens regularly there, something that folks are going to be angry about or see as a change in policy or procedure?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in on that. Vicky might have others, but I wanted
Okay.
to point out, I got a email in between meetings I was checking. But if I could ask Chad to address it. So it's on, you'll find it on page 4. It starts in section 8 related to headstones. And so right now we have upright headstones in the cemetery. This policy would change kind of the south section. So kind of everything existing would be upright, but everything kind of in the new area per this policy would require a flat headstone. And I just would ask Chad to kind of talk about what led into that and why we feel like that would be a betterment for the maintenance of the cemetery.
Right, so the south section, we haven't sold recently any plots in that section, and just for a maintenance standpoint, it's very time consuming. It usually takes 3 staffers at least a full day to mow and trim and groom all the grass off of the headstones. So in the south section, we were planning on doing all flat headstones. So staff could mow right over them. There would be minimal maintenance trimming, but then leaving the north section to have the option of a flat or upright monument.
And we still have available plots in both the north and south section?
Yes, we do.
So if you want an upright, you go north. If you want flush, you go south.
Correct.
But one could sell out. I guess for me,
Not about the upright.
I know, I think for me, if someone buys that plot, whatever they want to put on there, whether it's flat or upright, is fine with me. I don't want to be telling people what their memorial to their family member, whether that it has to be flat in the ground and they can't have one that's upright. So I'm not for going that direction with that one. And I realize that it takes some more time, but if once it gets filled up, we're going to be probably a pretty large city. Maybe we'll just hire somebody to come weed whip for us, like outside. We'll just have a company come in and do it then.
Is the email that you received against that change in the policy?
It was just a question regarding maybe the origin of how it came to be and why. And so I just saw it in between, so it kind of tickled my memory on that. And so when you thought controversial, I know just to kind of take a little Vicky's thunder away, like one of the impetuses for this is, and Vicky can speak to this a lot better than I, but there are so many like different requests, and all we have is really a outdated ordinance to rely on it. And so there have been, in the last year, probably over a half dozen different, requests that we've had to think like, well, how are we going to do this? And then how are we going to do this consistently? Like one of the antiquated things that we're pulling out is related to, can you, have a planter next to your headstone, next to the headstone? And so we've pulled that out, but we've made it more clear, like you can't plant like a permanent tree or shrub. And so, but those little details aren't really that clear in our current ordinance, and we'd like to take this out of the ordinance kind of purview and put it in a policy, because there's, as you know, a lot of pomp and circumstance with getting an ordinance adopted. So the ordinance is kind of the foundation that allows you to adopt the policy. And with that, I'll kind of defer to Vicki, because she's been dealing with the day-to-day.
Before we get to you, Vicki, can I just ask another question about the flush versus upright monument? I haven't paid attention to the monuments in the last time that I've been in there. Does the south tend to be more flush monuments right now, and the north tends to be more?
It's a mix of both.
Okay.
But we have a new row to start in the south, so before we sold anything there, we kind of wanted to get some feedback to see how we felt about that.
Yeah, I would say you'll find like newer cemeteries, like they'll establish flush mounted, and so it wasn't something that I recollect it being like a passionate stance from staff, like it has to be flush mounted. So if the council decided to have upright, I think the most important thing for, at least for me, I'll speak on my own behalf, is that we're clear in our rules, because as you can probably only imagine, like going over these rules and policies at a time where someone is grieving is supercharged emotionally, and so the more clarity we can provide Vicky and her team and Chad and his team, the better.
Okay. Well, and honestly, there's height and width restrictions in here for the upright ones. So it's not, I mean, the problem isn't that we're worried that someone's going to put up this grand monument, right? It's just kind of a maintenance issue, really.
Yeah. Yes.
My microphone's not on.
Yes.
I don't have any issues with the north-south ruling on what kind of monuments you put in. I think, though, that we need to be careful to make sure that there aren't half a dozen Jones family members there, and they're anticipating to potentially purchase more plots, and consistency concerns there. So with that, Vicki, did you have anything else to add to the?
No, I was just going to expand a little bit. What Brent had indicated is we're pulling a lot of the content that's in the ordinance and then taking it out because some of it is antiquated, and then we're putting the new information in the rules and regulations. We also saw, as we were reviewing these, that some information did contradict or repeat, so we eliminated the redundancy, and then we also eliminated any confusion. So we tried to make the ordinance separate, keep in the ordinance what is legally required, and then put in the rules and regulations what do we need to do our day-to-day operation. And I worked with Clarissa and I said, let's only keep what we need to keep in the ordinance. Again, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, that it's easier to change the policy than it is to go through an ordinance amendment. So that's why, since we have the opportunity to have the rules and regulations, that we chose to go to this route.
Can you explain to me how it works? So I give you a call, and I'm looking for a plot. You sell it to me, but then I sign some paperwork, and you also would give me information on the ordinance and then potentially these rules and regulations?
Yes, you actually get a deed, just like you do any property. So there's a deed that the city issues that needs to be signed by the purchaser and signed by the city. And then the second part you had asked about was, do we give them, right now we don't have any rules and regulations. The only thing that we really have are what is in the ordinance, and it's very vague.
Okay.
So I think going forward, it'll be a lot easier to be able to give both the legal part of the ordinance and then the rules and regulations. And then Brent mentioned at a time, a lot of families don't think about this, too much in advance. They'll come and they're already in a grieving process. So rather than having to try to explain everything, we don't have things in a policy. I think it'll be much easier to then give them the policy, give them the ordinance, and then let them ask questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Did you have?
I was just gonna say, so the only thing that sticks for me is that the flat versus the upright, and for me, just if you want to have either anywhere, I don't want to separate the cemetery one section from another. That's my only strong feeling about all of this. What, Lori, you're looking at me very.
No, I had the same thought. We've been just used to seeing traditional cemeteries. I realize it's more time and money to maintain it, but I'm willing for the city to take that on.
Does anybody else have any thoughts, feedback on?
I have no strong feelings about this, but I do like creating the policy. I totally get what you did, and I appreciate it. I think it's the right direction.
No, I won't say my pun.
Thank you.
Please don't, but now I'm curious.
What's that?
We'll talk later.
I have no strong feelings. I'm sure that you guys will do a remarkable job.
Okay. So it sounds like we have 2 votes for everything all over the place, 1 vote for no, and 1 vote for no preference. So I think we go ahead with everything all over the place.
No,
To break it down in simplest terms, if that's.
So what I'm hearing is you're okay with whatever monument based on size
Yep.
the deed holder chooses. Okay. Just wanted to be clear.
You're not asking me, because I'm.
The council in general.
Yes,
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's the only change that we have, correct?
Yep.
All right, if there is no other feedback, then I think we should jump into, Aaron, the feedback from the housing forum.
excuse me, Mayor, just one item, just
Sure.
for clarification, or not clarification, just for scheduling, just because of the time it'll probably take to make some of these amendments, and then there's a notification period, so you'll likely see this at your second meeting in August for adoption.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. All right, Aaron, following up on the housing forum.
We're having some technical difficulties on my side. There might be an exposed wire, so my microphone doesn't currently work. So Chad, do you mind if I take that spot?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were covering the exposed wire. I was like, what are you doing? Yeah. Oh,
There actually is.
So while Aaron's moving like, to that chair, I kind of chatted with Aaron. What I'm looking for would help me as kind of Aaron and I are maybe thinking about this action plan is, you might have to-dos, but this selfishly would be interesting for me to hear kind of your takeaways, like what you maybe learned, what you an idea that you had verified, an idea that maybe was challenged based on new information. I just think it would be good for us as staff to hear your kind of train of thought and line of thinking before and after, and just things that occurred to you or were verified, understanding that there might be other things that come up tomorrow, the next day, at the next work session, or at a future work session when we bring back an action plan. But I think this puts us in the best position for you to have, say, immediate feedback rather than waiting a couple of weeks. So,
does anybody want to go first? I'm still jotting down notes and compiling.
I can go first.
Thank you.
Sure thing. So I really liked the definitions that were included, and also sort of the area median income, and trying to target specific groups, specifically 80% of AMI or less for affordable housing. That direction really resonated with me. I took away, just kind of looking at some of the numbers that were presented. We have very little that falls into that category. I mean, so little. Out of the recent sales was less than 10%. And so that really struck me. So it isn't just our current housing inventory, it's sales as well. And so I liked seeing the example projects. It helped me understand the land trust quite a bit better, because that made me nervous when I first heard about it, but it made me a lot more comfortable hearing about how successful it has been in specific circumstances. So it made me more open to that sort of thing within the community. And, what's in the back of my mind is, what should our goals be? I don't know what those are. And that's kind of why I asked. It would be great to see that pie chart from other communities. Could we say, hey, we want to get somewhere percentage-wise close to a Chaska by X year or something like that, so that we could see what those goals are and look at our comp plan and say, how could we achieve that? Could we target certain areas and be a little bit more planful? Because I think that that's what I was missing when we were talking about strategic plan, is I don't feel like we have a plan or a goal. And could we take some of those steps towards that? That was my train of thought.
Thank you. Laura, you want to go?
Yes, I liked the idea of getting closer to it and coming up with a plan, rather than just, something, a general category to check off, but just getting a little more specific and breaking it down. I really am interested in the Carver County Community Land Trust, just being able to just have, hear that number, $300 a year to lease the land, and just the examples how they build equity. That is really interesting to me. I'd like to maybe get addresses on some of the projects for that. She would mention the communities.
What would you gain with
And
that?
not even, and it was some of the other ones too, like there was a Watertown one. Maybe I'll have to email.
So what are you looking, do you want to drive past and look
Yeah.
at them? Okay.
Yeah.
Picture that one house looked really a lot like Clover Ridge. verbiage. I wonder if some of those
Yes,
are. in the
yeah, so like,
overreach.
when they were saying no garage, is detached garage another, or is that just a different category? Because they're obviously still the cost of the garage.
Right, a detached garage is cheaper. No garage is obviously cheapest, so it
Okay.
goes, no garage, detached, attached is most
Okay.
expensive.
Yep, and like, I didn't even think of that there's a market for that, but,
I live in a house with a detached garage.
or no, even no garage.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
you know, with public transportation,
I have a
electric car
garage.
start. Yeah, it just seemed like there's more ways to make home ownership more attainable, and then also just learning more about the different percentages for the AMI. Chrissy?
So I won't go back over because Joy went through the numbers and the formulas, and that information was definitely good to hear, and I think the more that we can hear about it is good too. The more, I guess, tangible items of some of the things that could be built were kind of interesting to me. I've talked about, I just called them mother-in-law units before, but the ADU. I think that's something very interesting to look at. Especially because it's been done so many times in other parts of the country. We're just not accustomed to seeing it here, so it seems foreign to us. So I wouldn't mind possibly a little bit of information or examples coming back of what that could look like from other communities, whether it's on the coast, just out of kind of curiosity of what they're doing out in other areas. Yeah, you talked, Lori, about the garages, and it was a little bit foreign to me to think of no garage, especially in a cold climate. Maybe that works in warmer climates, but all I can think of is people trying to get their cars uncovered, especially because we are still a little bit more rural, so we don't have, the mass transit isn't quite as accessible to us at this point in time. There was one other one. The trunk fees. They kept talking about the city waiving the trunk fees. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and what that looks like?
So it's ironic that you're asked about that. So right now the city doesn't have trunk fees. So a trunk fee is essentially, if you think of Southwest Carver, so the area of that old Tollefson development. Right now that development is somewhat stunted in its ability to develop because we don't have water and sewer to that property. They'd have to kind of drag it, if you will, let's say a half a mile for round numbers. Well, if that would be connected out there, let's just say it's $1 million, but they'd only use 25% of it, so $250,000. Some cities will establish what's called a trunk fee, meaning it'd serve $1 million worth of essentially development, but someone's only using 25%. So you create a formula where this property pays 25%, this property pays 10, this property pays 30 to get you to the 100% of that cost to bring that water and sewer. We don't have trunk fees, but it's probably something for areas that we haven't developed. So, for example, everything that we've developed for the most part is developed between Dahlgren Road and 212 going west. I mean, there's some exceptions, but it's following that track. If you wanted to develop to the north, kind of north of 212, kind of north of the Fleet Farm area, or to the southwest, you might want to have a conversation. And we've talked about this during our planning and engineering meetings about establishing a trunk fee where the city would pay to have that water and sewer put out. Victoria, I think, just actually did that. You pay to put it out, and then you prorate the costs of that to properties based on their acreage. And so we don't have that. They talked a lot about connection fees, which we have a lot.
Right.
Most cities have. So there's waivers. It is somewhat, I would say it's not controversial, but debated on whether or not that's a use. We're only 1 or 2 meetings past Larry Harris's retirement, but right now he's probably getting a shiver down his spine thinking about waivers for connection fees or waivers on connection fees related to affordability. So we'd have to really establish a good kind of legal framework for our justification for that and the nexus. Look at I'm using all
I know.
Larry's
That was just gonna say we have to if we're going to be giving it to one group, then are we setting ourselves up for litigation from another? And
Right.
then, but the nexus, that word will never leave this building.
So
or this-
Larry Harris is so proud of all
I
of
know
us
he
right
is.
now.
We forgot the proportionality,
Right.
though. But anyways.
So, but long story short, on the trunk fee, I mean, that it can be a significant cost. We have a sewer, or we have a stormwater trunk fee or a stormwater area charge, which is similar, but we don't have it for water and sanitary sewer. It's likely something that we should be talking about if we want to kind of expand our development area beyond kind of going that west in between 212 and Dahlgren.
And
Councilmember Henry, you look like you have a question. No, okay.
anecdotally, it feels like we're hitting an edge developing west right now, just knowing some of the next property owners. So thinking about a trunk charge is appropriate just because I think the next development might need to be north or southwest if we're hoping for one in the next few years.
Can I ask a follow-up question on trunk charges? So is that something that if we have to do something to make water and utilities go out to the southwest area, it's only applicable to those folks who would hook into that part of the
Yeah,
system?
you end up doing, you would have the engineering or Dan or Bolton and Mink do a study and say, okay, we need to bring a, X amount inch water main and sewer pipe, and it'll serve 1,000 acres, these properties. And then it would perform an analysis that says, this property would have 20% of that capacity, and this property would get 10%. And then from it would be a portion out the cost to do the project. In most cases, the city upfronts the cost of that project, and then when the development occurs, the developer pays that trunk charge. Sometimes you have enough development like ready to go where they'll kind of go together in on it and help finance it. That's very rare, but I don't know all the details of Victoria, but if you see, they have a development that's quite a bit further south than what you'd consider Victoria city limits, and they extended their water and sewer kind of under the same philosophy. Because to kind of piggyback on Aaron's point, we're going to hit a roadblock going west because, depending upon where people are at in their kind of life, they're not going to probably be interested in selling. And we're kind of we're moving towards a position where all our eggs are in one basket as far as development goes. And it might take a little bit of creativity to get some of these newer areas that we don't traditionally think of as residential development areas to kind of get going.
And then the trunk fee is assessed when a property develops. It's not assessed to the current landowners.
Correct.
Okay.
So the thing of it is, if you might end up waiting,
Right.
and then the city ends up financing the principal and interest on that debt until someone goes.
But then it's paid for 100%.
Correct. It's kind of, think about it as Levi Griffin Road is kind of the same model, but under a different name.
Okay.
We have deferred assessments, and they're not really deferred because they're not in the city, but when they come into the city, they have to pay for this water and sewer work that was done in 2011.
Okay. And that's the trunk stuff. It's different from the Woodbury decision, and it doesn't get us in trouble.
The Woodbury decision is, and I'd have to kind of defer to Clarissa on this, to my understanding, it's primarily based on roads
Okay.
and requiring a developer to pay for road improvements outside of their development area. So
Okay.
making them, for example, it would be like making Meridian Fields pay for part of Jonathan Carver Parkway. It's just, there's no connection physically from their development to that roadway. So that's where the Woodbury and some other cities were charging fees related to that. And if I say any more, it'll be like 33% territory,
Okay.
and I don't want to get
Get
into
it.
that.
That's fair.
Clarissa, did I miss anything on that?
Okay.
I have just a couple
Go
more
ahead.
things. Yeah. So, some of the things we just talked about are kind of those hardline things, the numbers and, legally what we can do. There was a couple things that, besides just the mother-in-law units, that I thought were kind of interesting concepts that I didn't know a lot about. So the land trust, I think, is very interesting. And looking at that development too, that's the, in Chaska, that's the duplex.
Yep.
I had that photo
The
up.
twin homes, yeah.
Yeah, so there's some quality of life that goes along with this too. So the apartments, I'm just gonna use Carver Crossing as an example, are great, but you can't have pets unless it's a service animal that I know of, unless that's changed. You can? Okay. My understanding was that you couldn't initially when they opened that building. Maybe that
I was
changed
there
or maybe
last
it's wrong.
week and there
Okay.
were dogs aplenty.
We're there. Okay.
Cat in the window.
Great. Excellent. But having a pet in the home or being able to go out and garden and have a vegetable garden in the yard and having some of those, even if it's a small yard, having a place for the kids to go out and touch the grass. I just think there's something that's kind of interesting about having the land trust where you have your own single family home or duplex family home rather than being stacked in walls and walls and walls with other people.
Just to, not to interrupt, but to add to that, the point of those twin homes is they were all 4-bedroom homes. I mean, they were meant to be larger families living in an affordable kind of single family home, which, they were targeting a very specific market for that, but that's a gap they probably just didn't have in their housing units. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I just, like I said, the land trust is very intriguing to me. I think that could be a very interesting and really useful way to help people be able to live in a home rather than apartment, depending, what they want. Some people want the convenience of that. Some people want a little bit more space. I think, I'm trying to get back to this one slide here. They had on here, where did it go? Community Growth Partnership Initiative. That was one of their boxes. Do you know anything more about that one?
I believe it's a grant program that they administer. So, is that the grant that we had for? Okay.
And if you don't, this is their slide. I don't expect you to know, Erin.
Can you say what the words are?
Community Growth Partnership Initiative.
I'm gonna say I'm 33% sure that's a grant that we had for some redevelopment up at the Carver Ridge Senior Living site. So it's a grant that the CDA runs. They often apply through a city. So like when they mentioned that Waconia applied for their project, we did a similar ask of this group when they were looking for funding for Carver Place / Carver Oaks. So it's a CDA run grant program that the city needs to apply for.
Okay. I guess that's all I have for right now.
Good.
Well, my biggest question was the definitions, and they were answered in the first paragraph, where it's 30% of your income is whether it's affordable housing or not, and then the AMI. Those two questions were answered right. That was nice to see. The grandma houses.
The ADUs, the mother-in-law units.
The mother units, the grandma units. Didn't we have a conversation about the mini houses?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was
And we
years ago.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
And that was driven, it was a statewide ask that communities had to review it and essentially opt out. And the ordinance that we were being asked to adopt was pretty specific and didn't feel like it necessarily fit what our community needed. So that was the reasoning behind the opt-out of that program. Most Minnesota cities opted out of that ordinance.
Yep, that kind of rings a bell now.
Perfect time to revisit.
And I'm just looking at the different types of housing that we don't have. We don't have any long-term care in Carver, which I think would be a very big plus. Those are my only takes out of that.
Glenn, can I ask what is long-term care?
We have assisted living. There's a huge void of 100% long-term care, 24/7 care. They have memory care, but that's different. There's classifications, and let's just say that in the southwest metro areas, there's a limited supply of long-term, full-time nursing facilities.
So similar to like hospice care?
Nursing home.
Nursing home care.
Okay.
Well, it's just, it's not that there's, well, there is a shortage of it, but there's even a shortage of personnel to help with them. So that's the biggest thing. But I'd be very intrigued to look for something like that as well.
All right. For me, I like the ideas of ADUs at face value, assuming that that's where mom, dad, any other family member or close relative could live if they need help. But it also, I think there's the threat there that I am a little bit more nervous about. The example that you gave about it being a Airbnb and it becoming a party house in your neighbor's backyard, or it becoming, you know, it being a 400 square foot something with 12 people living in it. It concerns me a little bit. I don't necessarily know that I'm in the place where I'd like to not consider that, but the threats there are definitely bouncing around in my head. I still love and I appreciate that you updated the slide of your house pricing and what setbacks do, and while it might sound great and we might assume that everybody wants a 30-foot setback between them and their neighbors, making it 60 feet between houses, that's only going to do bad things for affordability. What also really resonated with me, and I'm glad that they said it, was that, you know, these folks who are spending more than 30% of their income on their housing aren't necessarily the folks who are living in affordable housing or lower priced housing. You can still be house poor and live in a $500,000 house. So that really resonated with me. I liked everything that I heard about the community land trust and would love to hear more about that and go down that path. I also like some of what they said, and I think that this is the building blocks that we're working on tonight for a bigger plan, but the requirements that are for affordable housing that are tied to development, so that you all know that whenever we see a developer in here with a concept plan or a preliminary plat, that I ask about the affordability component. So would love to be able to actually have something that says, well, we require in the city of Carver, or, you know, certainly place a priority on X, Y, and Z, and kind of have that information that we can require.
I thought the Minnetonka example was really interesting, that to get a comp plan amendment, which we did for Hawthorne Ridge, we did for Meridian Fields, we did for Quick Trip, but Quick Trip wasn't. Meridian Fields and Hawthorne Ridge and Carver Ridge, all three of those. That Carver Ridge obviously has an affordable component, but Meridian and Hawthorne don't. But I thought that was a nice tie to say, to jump this hoop, this is a requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. The ideas of, I think you made this point, but just also making the point, the idea of no garage, that's a deal breaker for me. I don't think, like, for me at best, I see lots of on-street parking, and I don't think that that's a good idea. I think houses, especially in Minnesota, need to have a garage, although I understand that there are costs associated with making that decision.
It doesn't have to be 3 garages either.
Right.
It could be 1, it could be 2.
Could be one nice tuck under, yeah. And I also like the idea of the proof of parking. I'm curious how that is pushed through, or how you make folks eventually have to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars if and when it's demonstrated that their existing parking isn't accommodating their folks. But I like that as a tool to have in our toolbox, if that helps make things more affordable or give more leniency. And I reserve the right to email you or talk to you the next time I'm in City Hall with 4 more things that I
Yes, agreed.
As I hope we all will do,
Right.
because I think that this is going to be a process, and
Yep.
we're going to be talking about it for a while.
Yeah. Courtney, I want to make 1 or 2 comments very briefly. I don't want to get into, we don't have to certainly debate any of this tonight, but when we're talking about the ADUs and the Airbnb things, and certainly that could be an issue, but I could have my house be an Airbnb and I could have a party house every weekend if we wanted it. But I did like the supplemental income aspect. She did mention that too, that it is possible to make some more income to become a little bit less house poor if you have that. And I mean, you could rent, I mean, if someone wanted to rent their house, they could rent it to 20 people at the same, too. So I don't know that we would have a way to, I guess, control the numbers in the house. But that was just
fair.
I
It's
wanted
just
to-
what makes me my tummy flutter.
But we could, we could do it in the main house too. So I just wanted to
Yep.
comment that back.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, any other thoughts or feedback? Did you get what you needed from us? Is there anything specific you want to dive into?
So it sounds like there's a lot of interest in the land trust, so maybe a follow-up presentation to get some additional information about how those are financed, how we might play a role in that financing would be helpful. I think the big goal, one of my big goals for a housing action plan would be to have definitions that we all understand and agree on, so we're speaking common language. We'll explore the idea of trunk fees. I think we would have done that anyways, but we can start thinking about that development-wise. And then we can start gathering some examples of the ADUs. I know there's a lot of communities in Minnesota that are thinking about them right now, so it's another thing that we can definitely think about. So thank you, and thank you to the CDA. They put a lot of work into that, obviously.
Yeah, and that was really clear, even like I mentioned before, like the choreography of so-and-so's got side 3 and 4, like you
Right.
guys put a lot of work.
And they're just a really excellent resource to know that we have them anytime we need them. So
And they were going to come back with a definition for the housing revenue bonds also? Okay.
I'll forward any information I get from them onto the
Okay.
council.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to communications, the 9.1, the strategic plan action update. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's kind of fun to give this. All last week, I gave kind of the action or the strategic plan kind of summary to each of the commissions. So thank goodness that Brenda Good doesn't have to listen to the update. Otherwise, we might send her to the funny farm. So I'll just kind of point out some of the measurable progress that we've made. So we've started seeking proposals for training related to bias and inclusion. And then as far as using inclusionary language and plain language and developing communication materials, etc., I pointed to the collective bargaining agreement, but I would also advocate that the cemetery policy is another opportunity where we're trying to strive toward plain language in our communication and regulatory areas. Moving on, action plan. So I don't think it's a reach to say that the CDA and the housing kind of forum went beyond expectations. At least for me, I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I have a better understanding of what affordable and life cycle housing means in the community, and I think there's an opportunity for us to share this story with residents, in addition to coming up with a housing action plan and communicating it with our partners, developers, etc. Moving on to downtown development, we completed the space study for public services. I think we also came a long way into looking at like what that space might look like tonight, just based on that Aaron and the Park Commission's work on the concept. The Parks Commission also had a kickoff meeting. Aaron and Chad were there related to the use of Riverside Park. One of the things that I think was really interesting, and the HPC had some feedback on this, is this understanding the dynamic of what Riverside Park really means to the community, especially for folks that have been here for quite a while, understanding that it at one point had 3 ball fields and the Riverside Ballroom, and that it was really served as the heart of the community. And so how can that be honored within the context of making it something usable for kind of next generations, if you will. So I think the Parks Commission really got a flavor for that, and the HPC was interested in that as well. So more to come on that. I would also offer under this same piece, I kind of think that we've kind of checked the box on the church by the river with that concept to say, like, we kind of know how we want to use that space. I think Vicki and I can still work on, and by the way, kudos to Vicki for saving the city $5,000 on the flood insurance. But I think we've kind of checked the box on like how we want that to be used, at least within the context of that concept. So if it's okay with the council, we would kind of mark that as completed unless you want to do some further analysis.
I think check the box.
Good, look at that.
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
Yay.
Thanks to you.
It's not a competition, but if it was, we'd be winning. Infrastructure management. If you remember, we did the corridor study kind of kickoff for County Road 40, had a really robust discussion on what that looks like. And so Dan Lanas is doing some additional work, having some conversations with the county. We have, for your work session in August, a really good conversation on mass transit and the future use of Carver Station. And, you know, Aaron and I had a nice conversation on Friday talking about, like, what are the outcomes? Because obviously the grant can, or maybe not obviously, but the grant can last for several years based on the rate that we're using it. But it's a major piece of what we're doing as far as budget and kind of physical space. And so if anything, it's an opportunity for us to check in with the five of you and say, like, this is the grant, this is how we got it, this is the uses, this is kind of the financing involved, because more than likely by the time the grant proceeds end, it could stretch beyond, you know, this administration, if you will. And so, I mean, I think 8 years, is that what we were thinking, that
Right.
at our current use rate? And so don't want to give you the sense that, like, you're going to be in a position where you have to decide, like, what happens there, but it's more of a, we're going to review the table of contents, like, and give you an opportunity to ask some questions. And then review prioritized projects within the Parks Master Plan. We've been working on a draft, not just with Parks, but kind of all of our pieces within that capital plan, and hope to have a first draft to you at your second meeting in August. And then finally, organizational development. You'll see funding for a finance director position within the draft of the 22 budget, in addition to contemplation of staffing needs for communication and fire within the context of that long-term financial plan. Vicky's been having a series of conversations with Marco, our current technology provider, to look at different service models, so that's moving forward. And then we had the conversation regarding the Mitsubishi Outlander earlier this evening, but then also as the summer goes on, we'll have an opportunity, Aaron will present just kind of an overview of the Green Step cities and where the council wants to go next to kind of formalize our plan for that. So not a huge amount of updates, but a flavor for what we've been working on as we go forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Nope.
All right. No questions from
Well,
us. Thank you.
Good
It's good to see the progress. Let's see. Mr. Mayor, do you have a city manager's report?
I have nothing to report tonight, council.
Do we have any, let's do city council requests or communications? Glenn?
Had a planning commission meeting, and they finalized the first phase of the Timber Creek plat, and then they reviewed the
Strategic.
yeah, that's exactly what it was. strategic
words.
plan. Yeah.
We just went through it.
Other than that, yeah, nothing else.
Christie?
We had an HPC meeting last week. We had two applicants come forth. One was, well, I'll call Barb Swanson's, the former realty and insurance building. They were approved to have what looks like a waterfront mural painted on the back of their building, and they're going to be utilizing the Integrated Arts Academy students to come and as classwork to gain credits to come and paint that. So Brent, thank you. You did a lot of background work to get some of that information about if that was allowed or not allowed and how we could make that happen. So that was approved, and then there was another house that was approved for their siding. It was basically a replacement of a similar material. So those are I think the only two things that were on that agenda. And if you want to look up what that mural is, look up the agenda online from the HPC. It's pretty neat. It's going to look, they were kind of talking about the fact that if we end up certifying the levee and maybe getting some of these trail things, that it would be something to actually be viewed from the back. I want to say thank you to Brent and then also to Aaron. So the HPC as a commission as itself, there's been a number of things that I've asked for over the years to help the HPC commission members to be more successful in what they're doing, and also to have more, there's a lot of information and it's background checking, you know, on historical information that goes along with it, and along with our guidelines that are now, you know, just having the guidelines for that specific project in the packet so it can be referenced has made a world of difference. And I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work on, I guess, upgrading the HPC to getting them to just a really great spot right now. So thanks, you guys.
All right.
I don't have any updates.
Joy?
I know it was on our consent agenda, the facility rentals. I just want to say how pleased I am to see them really start to grow this summer, especially in June. I mean, we've made such an investment in this facility and making the Church by the River available again. It's really nice to see the community using these resources. So I was really pleased to see that. That's all I got.
Thanks. Just a few updates from me. We had our first in-person Carver County Mayor's meeting in way too long. So that's where all the Carver County mayors get together, and it's kind of one part support group and another part like, okay, we're talking about a turn back. Have you guys ever
Consider the sources.
So, but it's a really good group. Let's see, there's also a Regional Council of Mayors meeting. That's something that's through ULI, and it was there's an annual meeting where you, with school superintendents. So there were a bunch of topics that we went through, and that was another really good meeting. Last week, I did a meet and greet with Deputy Sandberg at Carver Crossing, where it was just kind of an open forum for those folks to ask us any questions that they had related to the city or related to law enforcement in the city. So we probably had about 8 people show up, and it was just a really nice, intimate donuts with the deputy kind of event.
Did you say donuts with the deputy?
Donuts with the deputy.
Yeah, I like that.
We had our first farmers market on
Yay.
Tuesday, and the second one will be tomorrow night. We had a really good turnout. I was down there with Aaron, and we could not believe how many people were there, like right at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So a tremendous turnout, really, really good stuff. There were about 20 vendors there last week, and everything from dog treats to kind of all of your real traditional farmers market fare, but it was really good. We had
Does it start at 3? Is that what you said?
3 to 6. Yep.
Yep.
3 to 6. And it's funny. They talked about it used to be 3 to 7 in the farmers markets that they've done, but even between 5 and 6, the traffic really tapered off. So they decided it doesn't even make sense to stay open that extra hour. So 3 to 6 every Tuesday night until the end of September. We had a Carver Business Alliance meeting up here on Friday, and that was a good turnout. And those meetings are always super casual, where we share some updates from the city, and then we get some updates from the local businesses. Let's see. Finally, my last update is on the levy. Last Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Representative Emmer's legislative aide, who let me know that the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, Urban Development, and Other Related Agencies, or THUB, approved its fiscal year 2020 budget bill, which includes $2.5 million for Carver's levy project.
Really? Oh.
Can I high-five you right now?
So it made it, he called me and let me know it still at that point had to go through a floor vote. I assume that that's happened already. So just, so that's well and good, and I'm super, super excited, and my reaction was very similar to all of yours last Tuesday. But that's the House. Now we still have to get funding from the Senate. Then they have to marry those bills together, and still have a lot of hurdles to go through. And I said in my email to Brent, I think if this truly is a marathon, I think we're just coming up on the first 5K, which is only 3 miles into it. But I'm super excited, and I think that this is really good news. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Oh, so the one thing is the only other project that got that amount of money, the 2.5 million, like that much money in Representative Emmer's district was funding related to the Highway 212.
Oh.
So that's really good news. So we also got a call from Senator Klobuchar's office saying that, so if you remember, the Senate is weeks, if not a couple months, behind where the House is in this process. In the voicemail that we received said that Senator Klobuchar has recommended funding for our project. I don't think they shared any details of dollar amounts in there, but I've got it on my to-do list to follow up with both Senators Smith and Klobuchar to make sure that they know that we got the funding. The Representative Emmer is recommending the funding and seeing if we can get something from the Senate as well. So yeah, so super exciting. But that is it from me. So with that, unless we have anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make motion to adjourn.
A motion by Councilmember Henry,
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Nope, no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, our meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening.